how many cycles we have. It's not just win one time, win again.
Thank you for sharing it. She's got the flyers over there for folks that are interested. All right. So again, the point of that was just to get a sense of like, yeah, but it's it's a live stream. So the point of us just like doing that is just so people know like who's in the room, and that's kind of what Transform, that's what we want to do, is make sure we are bringing everybody together in the space, because it is a heavy lift and we need everyone from all areas of the city to be involved, and also just so people can connect with other people, learn their neighbors, and oh, you live in the ninth ward too and we in the same neighborhood, let's connect. So that's why I like to do that, just so people kind of know what that is. So we're going to go through this stuff quick, these next 2 slides really quick. So the purpose of our meetups, because we have some new folks, so I just want to make sure we level set. The purpose of our meetups are to connect and build with fellow St. Louisans looking to improve our city. We are fellow St. Louisans. We are in this space looking to improve our city and our region. We also share information about legislative updates regarding things that impact our streets and other aspects of our community's built environments. Our meetups also serve as a space for everybody, residents, community-based organizations, our elected and appointed leadership, business owners, whoever, to come in so we can start discussing solutions and to be productive and how we can make things better. Because like I said before, it's a heavy lift. And also our meetups are designed for us to eventually, we want to develop and implement advocacy efforts that results in improved change through policy, through procedure, whatever that is. We about that action. So just letting y'all know that. House rules real quick. Again, level setting. One person will speak at a time, just so we hear everyone. Please be considerate and respect differences of opinion. We don't do disrespect, but we'll be all right in that. Also, we follow Vegas rules. So personal stories, government names stay here, but the lessons and the learnings learned will leave here. And that's what will apply to make the changes we want to see in our communities. Make sure we give everybody their time to shine, to express themselves. We have a parking lot, because sometimes I know Mr. Stringfellow asks like some really like great questions I don't know the answer to. A lot of people don't know the answer to at that time. So if we have those like pressing questions, we'll put them on the parking lot and then we'll revisit them at the next meetup. And also, you do not have to be knowledgeable about local government to be an active participant. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. Everybody cool? All right. So now I am done talking because I'm tired of hearing my voice. I am going to turn it over to our special guests in the building to talk about, again, the $1 million question people always ask me about is how are our streets funded? Oh, that part. So we're going to get into that, Craig, okay? We're going to get into that. And so we have not one, but 2 special guests. We have Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, the Alder lady. Clap it up for her. Representing the 10th Ward. And y'all send some positive energy to Alderman Browning. He slipped and injured his back, so he will not be here. However, his awesome assistant Kaitlyn is in the space pitch hitting for him, so clap it up for her for pitch hitting at a short notice. So what we're gonna do, you don't mind, Alderwoman, Alderman Browning sent us some slides. Did you see them? So we're going to have Kaitlyn come up, and then I know this mic isn't, but we're live streaming. So come on up. I can kind of fiddle with the slides, and then you can get to it. I'm really impressed with these slides. So I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Give me some grace with these slides since I got the text that I was presenting at 4. So give me some grace, but work with me, and I'll do the best that I can. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So how are our streets funded? The question of the hour. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So first through our ward capital funding. Ward capital, this fund is a 0.5% capital improvement sales tax that is on everything that you buy in the city of St. Louis. And then 50% of that goes to the alder people for their specific ward funds divided by 14. So each alder person gets roughly 3.5% to spend on things in their ward. The other funds, the other 50% goes to major parks, the recreation center, citywide, and police department capital improvement funds. They each get like 6%, or it's a little different for each one of them. And the alder annually decides how to use the funds. They can use a portion of it and then save a portion for it next year. But because they only get a little bit each year, it's kind of hard to do larger projects, and you have to save for multiple years. But also, they're elected officials, so they might not be elected in 4 years or whatever, and it's kind of hard to then do that long-term planning, especially if they're planning on a project that they've been working for 4 years, and then they aren't elected, and it's like, person that is after me, will you please do this project? And it's kind of up to them if they'll actually do it or not. And then what happens after they kind of either from constituent requests or from what they see in the ward, they will make a request to the streets department for a cost estimate. And then the streets department will get their list and go look at the streets and then give them a cost estimate of how much it will cost to repave those streets or to do things like chip and seal, etc. And then if they want like more of a redesign, so instead of just repaving the street, restriping it the exact same, if there's a redesign, then it has to go to BPS, which is the Board of Public Service. And then BPS will redesign the street for the parameters that the street has. It's if it's only 60 feet wide, there's only, small amount of things that you can do with it, whether like reducing a lane, what can be possible. And then if you are redesigning, almost always a traffic study has to be done. So that's more money that has to be done. And most traffic studies cannot be done by the city. Right now, we're contracting almost all of them out unless they're very small traffic studies. With that, then the streets department will give their estimate to the alderperson. The alderperson then gets to decide what they're funding. A lot of times, I know we put in ours and it was over budget, of course, what we want to do, but we wanted to see like what we're starting with for the next couple of years, and then the alderperson gets to decide. You may be saying, that's a little silly that the alderperson gets to decide exactly what is happening in their street. They're not engineers. They're not professionals in how streets are done. But that is how our system works right now. So that is what the decision they get to make. The streets department will give their input on like what they think might happen, but it is up to the alderperson to make those decisions. So there can be problems with that in the past. I know there was a street in our ward that hadn't been paved in like 30 years because the previous alderperson didn't like the people that lived on that street. So it can become a problem. And so this is one of the 4 ways streets can be funded. If you want my next slide. Next is St. Louis Works. This is a 4% tax on all gas and electric bills. This funding goes directly to the street department, who then either the alderperson can be like, hey, can we use half my ward capital, half St. Louis Works funds, or the street department can be like, oh, you can use St. Louis Works funds on this. And it's a little weird and confusing from my side. I know I was asking questions about this. I'm like, how exactly does this work? How do I know if we can use these funds? How do we know how much is in the account? And it's kind of a fuzzy thing, but we're figuring it out. It has a different timeline than the ward capital funds, which makes it really hard. It runs with the financial season instead of, the ward capital, they have different budget seasons, basically. So it's a little weird sometimes when you're working also with different budget seasons for different funds. And then the alderperson then approves the funding for this. Next slide. And then we have capital funding. So every year we have a new budget, and there can be a line item budget for a street if if the budget team so choose to be like, we're going to pave this street, that doesn't happen very often, just because typically it's kind of done through other means, i.e. ward capital. And then also, when there is a surplus in our budget, 50% goes into our savings for the future, if there's any emergencies, etc. And then 50% goes into the capital improvements committee. And then there is a advisory committee that is made of citizens, and they kind of get all the presentations and they kind of rank what they think should be done. And then it goes to two other people are on the committee, and the president of the Board of Public Service, and a representative for the mayor, representative for the president's office. So it's a bunch of people all throughout the city are on this committee, and they finally decide how this money can be spent, and then they approve it, and then it goes on to the budget. But it is a little hard because we have about $500 million of capital improvement needs in this city, 260-ish million. That is critical. And this year we had $36 million to spend. So not a lot of it can always be spent on the things that are needed. And especially with what I'll talk on my next slide, with grants, it a lot of times goes towards that. The last thing on this is also recently, right now, we have ARPA funds, which is the American Rescue Plan Act, which is we had line item budgets in that to repave our major arterials, 5 of them, as well as 10 intersections. And these 10 intersections were picked based off where the most crashes are. Now, next slide, sorry. And then we have our grants. We have the East-West Gateway grants. East-West Gateway mainly is applying for grants to the federal level, and because they're a larger organization and our city's kind of small, they're more likely to be able to get the grants. East-West Gateway is a coalition of governments, and they are I think it's the 6 counties, the 3 in Illinois, and then the 3 in Missouri, and they will then give us grants, mostly from the federal government. We can directly apply to federal government grants, and then we can also apply for grants from the state government. The state government generally don't give us very many, and if they do, it's typically for bridges. So they're generally not where we're getting the revenue for, because they're mostly doing our highways. Here is this wonderful map I made of how streets are funded. And you may be going, that's kind of confusing. And I worked a long time on this, and it continued to be kind of confusing. But I think it just kind of shows that it just is. That is shows that it is a little quirky. And the fact that it comes from 4 different areas makes it hard to get to that goal of finally getting a safely repaved street. But it's everything that I went through: ward capital, the St. Louis Works going together, our capital funding, and our grant money all going towards getting that street done. Next slide. And then here are some current bills that we're working on. Alderwoman, would you like to talk a little bit before, or do you want me to go? Okay, cool. I'll go through a little bit about the bills that have either passed or very close to it. First, we have Vision Zero, which is actually a resolution. This is like a philosophy that we as the government, we as the city should be working towards doing everything possible to get to 0 traffic deaths. This is something that originated out of Sweden when they realized that traffic deaths don't have to happen. Most of them are considered accidents, but it's also when in airplanes and other manufacturing, we always look to where human accidents might happen and how to make it so that they don't happen. So that's all that we're also asking for our streets. And after they implemented this plan and really went for it in their city of Oslo, which is like 2 million-ish people, and I think it was 2019, but I might be off on that year, they only had 1 traffic death. And it was the driver. And that's just not the reality in the St. Louis city. So it is possible. It is something that we can strive for and work towards. But here's step 1. We're saying that this is our goal. And then to go along with that, there's Complete Streets, which is Board Bill 217. This is Alderman Schweitzer's bill. This is what there was the presentation last time, so I won't talk about it too much. But basically, every time a street is being redone, is being repaved, we should think about redesign for all modes of transportation. Those pedestrians, cyclists, etc. We're thinking about it, and then there's a committee that will go through that plan basically and get it done. We do already have this. This is just updating the bill. Alderman Schweitzer is waiting, and it's going to technically die in this session because it ends in a week, and then she's going to reintroduce it. It'll be probably like between Bill 1 and 10, and then reintroduce it, and we'll continue working on it in the next and working with our city partners. Next is the automated camera enforcement, BB 105. This is just those red light and speed cameras. This bill was just perfected last week and should, as long as all the votes stay the same, be passed the Board of Aldermen next week on Monday. And this is just to put up those cameras. And to go along with that is 106, which is the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Improvement Fund, which the revenues from that will go into this fund to go into those 3 E's: enforcement, education, and engineering. So this will be both education, to doing driver's education with SLPS, and then as well as engineering, redoing our neighborhood streets so that they're safer. We're not just trying to enforce until it becomes not an issue, because you have to do all 3 of them to become to make actually safe streets. And then earlier in the session, the city approved a driver's education grant for a pilot program for high school students, as well as right now, what is the most common bill in the Board of Aldermen is the speed hump bill. We've had over 300 this session, speed hump like themselves, passed this session. It is basically the only buttons right now that doesn't cost millions of dollars that older people can push to try to make a street safer. Most older people do have a program. I know my older person, it is also where it's different by older person, but a lot of them go by this, is that if someone wants a speed hump on their street, then reach out to your older person. The older person will give you a petition. If you get over 50%, then they will bring it through the board. Though some older people have a bit of a different way that they go about that. That's all that I have. Anyone have questions? Oh, yeah.
First off, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course.
Very succinctly. Thank you for that. And hang out here. What I wanted to do, Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, I know you're taking some pictures, but if you could, do you have anything you want to add to what was mentioned, what was discussed? And then we're gonna open it up because there's a lot of information and I see some questions. Mr. Stringfellow, I know Jan got some too back there. So we'll open it up. But did you want to? Okay. Yeah, that was pretty good. Oh. Okay. All right. I know some questions. Who has some questions? And also, because we're streaming, we're testing out the streaming thing. So
And there it is. I can make it a lot simpler for you because most of the aldermen.
Where's the camera?
Didn't get all those different funding sources. Funding sources are pretty limited to
It's basic, yeah. It's basically just ward capital for the most part. Sometimes St. Louis works, but on the major streets, it's the other things. But it's really just the major streets that those other ones come into contention.
Can we give Kaitlyn another hand? That was a great presentation. So before I do the questions, I'll just do another introduction because I didn't do it during the introduction because I didn't want to take away from that. But again, my name is Shamim Clark-Hubbard. I humbly serve as Alder Lady in the 10th Ward in the city of St. Louis. The 10th Ward has 8 amazing neighborhoods. There's Whiteout Skinker, Skinker to Bolivar Place, West End, Visitation Park, Academy Sherman Park, Lewis Place, and Fountain Park. When I was running, my tagline was 8 neighborhoods plus you and me equals the power of 10. And so that's what we did, and we ran and we won, and we've been having a good time ever since. It's my second term down at the Board of Aldermen. I love my job. I don't take a second for granted. And one of the things I know I don't take for granted is my relationship with Kelly, the organizer here for this evening. And I could echo all of the comments that were made about her and the effort and the intention and the space that she creates here for you all. And this is balance for us, you know, because we can sit at committee hearings that we know people can't make. We can be at our board meetings that we know people can make. But being out here tonight and being able to touch and agree, work, facilitate, come up with best practices and ideas that I can then take back, we can take back to the Board of Aldermen, and then you can take back to your neighborhoods. That's immeasurable and that's priceless. So again, thank you, sis, for your yes and for your commitment to this work, right? And so let's give her one more hand as well. And so I did take a couple of notes before we get into the questions to add on to. I love what you said, Kaitlyn, about us not being street engineers. She's absolutely correct. I'm clearly not a street engineer. So as alder in the space that I'm in, I yield to the representation and the meetings that I have with the streets department and with the Board of Public Service, of which each alder has a liaison with the Board of Public Service. And we have quarterly meetings. And in those quarterly meetings, not only do we get an update about how much ward capital we have available, what's been encumbered, what's been spent, what can be allocated, what can be put in into accounts to hold. As Kaitlyn mentioned, if you're working on trying to help with a project or a major project in your ward. But during those meetings, we also have representation from the different departments. So forestry will come and say, hey, I need this much money for trees, or streets department comes and say, we need this much money for paving. And they will actually have given you and presented you a list of streets that their engineers and their staff has felt needs to be paved, or sidewalks or curb cuts, you know, and then you combine that with whatever list that you might have gotten from your constituents that call and say, hey, it's potholes over here. Can we get speed humps over here? The paving is horrible over here. I do go and visit myself before I carry it back to BPS and Streets Department. But all of that plays a role in it. In the end, though, I absolutely yield to the Street Department, because, you know, that's just what I feel would be a best practice as an alderperson, most responsible thing. Because if I expended somewhere where the street department said, no, I told you that we needed this street paved for this reason, and then I say, no, I want this street paved because here I like or don't like somebody, you know what she's saying, then I won't be available to be equitable to the entire ward. So I yield to them on that. I will add something to the timeline of that is, I could say, hey, yes, I want to get Clara paved right now, today, tomorrow. And with the streets department, and when we go into that process. But one thing that was not mentioned in that is a part of it is the utility, our utility departments. So our utility divisions, departments, their plans and their projects. So it wouldn't be reasonable for me to say I want to get a street paved, and the street department already knows that in a month, Gas Spire is going to come dig the street up. You know, so they have to work on that schedule along with them. So that's another thing that could that could be added to the timeline of when you wanted to get something paved. The Vision Zero, I did want to also mention that not only did that resolution pass, it passed in bank. So that means that all of us, all 14 alders and the president of the Board of Aldermen, signed on to that, and signed on in consensus to that Vision Zero policy, which is good. And then the speed humps, you know, is the vein right now, literally. Like, not only is it's not the vein of my existence when they're done, it's just getting them done. Because the reality is, even with the processes we have of people saying, okay, I want this, I have petitions, some of my blocks do petitions, some of them I just know enough people on the block that I'll say, you know, some of your neighbors have requested them, are you okay with them? Some people will say, the worst I've ever heard it say is, I don't mind them, but I don't want one in front of my house, you know, or something like that. And then you can work with you do see the specs within BPS, and you can say specifically, you know, I want humps, but please don't put one in front of Miss minor's house, or something like that. So which the address. So that makes a difference. But there's another part of that process where after they've been legislated, let's talk about that. It takes at least a minimum of 4 readings for something to be legislated. So while a constituent says, hey, I want speed humps, I have to say, okay, what day of the week is that? Well, then I have to introduce the bill on a Tuesday prior for it to be first read on a Friday. And then on that Friday, I have to wait and see if after it gets first read, when I can get a committee hearing. That might be the next week or the week after, or whenever that chairman is having a committee hearing. Then I have to pass it out of the committee. And then once it's passed out of committee, then it has to come back to the Board of Aldermen to be perfected in third read. That's another 2 or 3 weeks. Then it has to be signed by the mayor. Then it has to go back and come and be put into our St. Louis Works computer department, the St. Louis Works. So that's another part where you have to input it into there before it still gets to the street department. Okay. So after all of that, then you get added to a list. And guess what? Guess how many companies do speed humps for the entire city of St. Louis? Ding, 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 ding. So now once we get past all of that, you have to wait for the one company, the one vendor that does those speed humps to navigate this list of hundreds and hundreds of speed humps and figure out, hey, what's his best practice to get the most out of his staff that day? Because I can't put a speed hump in the first ward and then say, okay, likely I want to come put a speed hump in the 14th ward or the 13th ward across the city. So he has to then map out with all these speed hump requests after they've been through that whole process, how he's going to now install them. It's just, I honestly feel, as long as with a lot of my colleagues, that we can do that better, and having our constituents be able to advocate that they would like to see a better process when that works would help as well. We have some street advocates here in the room with Mr. Charles Bryson. I'm not sure if you know him, but he could come up here and speak just as much as I could about not just that process, but how we want to work towards safe streets. So those were the few things I took notes on. That presentation, again, was amazing. We need to take that back and share it with some of our colleagues, for that matter. And then, and I'll be available for any other questions that you may have. Yes.
Legislative assistant, whatever. Kaitlyn, you.
How long have you been doing what you do?
I started in August with Alderman Browning, and before that I was with the mayor's office as a summer fellowship.
So how did you come about obtaining all of this information that you shared with us tonight?
Yeah, mostly it was just from gradually getting it over the past 8 months, however long it's been. And then while I was making this presentation earlier this week, I was double checking, going through all of the ordinance and things and trying to go back through the St. Louis Works and checking that it did actually have to be approved, who had to approve it and where it went and things like that. So even that, I had to go back and double check where things that I thought, I was like, isn't that how it works? And then it definitely is a bit of a convoluted system. Yeah. Yes, all of them are funded. 2 of them are currently hiring someone, but yeah, 3. Yeah.
Did you, this is to
Mr. Stringfellow.
I'm sorry.
Because I see it's a lot of people. I have a lot of questions. Do not forget your questions. We'll come back to you, but I just want to make sure everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. My question is, maybe you said it, after all of that, who actually comes out to the streets and does the work?
After all of that, either the street department will do it themselves, or will contract out. A lot of times the street department will do the easier, like if it's just a repave, but if we have to change anything about the street, a lot of time we'll contract out because we don't have that equipment, etc.
Do you do a RFP for that work, or do you already have contractors in place? Subcontract out the work.
To my understanding, it kind of depends on how big the project is. We have some that we work with, and then there's also if it's a really large project. I also know from the ARPA money, since we're doing so much, we're beefing up the street department to be able to do more, which will be better in the future too, because contracting out is more expensive than doing it in-house. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a part of the ARPA funding and one of the bills that I just carried down at the Board of Alderman, Board Bill 143, has specific funding in there for for the health department as well, but for the street department to build capacity with some trucks and some machine and paving things that they needed to be able to do some of this work. Anything that goes through BPS is RFP'd out. So that is a process that you can look on their website and follow, or you can follow the City Journal. They have all the RFPs, live RFPs. There's a link that we can put in. I can share with Kelly. It has all the RFPs, not just for that work, but for any work in the city of St. Louis. Mm-hmm.
Hearings for the bills and going back and forth, there has to be a better way, a more efficient way of getting decisions made.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think I would say probably about, and not most, all of my colleagues feel the same way, especially after going through. When I first got into office in 2019, this process wasn't like this. They didn't have the legislative piece of it. It was the constituents would reach out with their petition or whatever, their cry for a speed hump, and then the legislator would work with BPS and the streets department, if approved, and get those speed humps. The different piece in that was we had to pay for a speed study. The speed study you had to pay for out of ward capital, and it did not guarantee that you were going to get speed humps. So for me, I would talk to my constituents and say, you all, let's be clear. We really want this and we want to advocate. I need you all to be with me, because the speed study might show up on a day when you don't have it, but I know you're living it and I know you're seeing it. And so, we need to make sure, even when we had to go through that process, there was a way to work around that, because again, you could pay the money for the speed study and then the street department come back and say the speed study did not reflect that there's a speeding issue over here, so you won't get the humps. Now, fast forward, that was the first. When I got into office in 2019, it probably was something different. It's probably been different iterations all along. This legislative piece took away the speed study piece, right? Because it's law, it's legislating. It's like, no, you can't tell me I don't need them or I might not need them. You got to do them. And so, but within doing that, again, some colleagues, feel like it made it easier and they fought for it. I feel like it's made it more cumbersome and harder. The length of it, if not for nothing else, the length of the time that it takes to get it. And now the backup. I mean, the street department told me they've never had this many backed up requests, and that they have to do is law, speed humps. And not to mention, the legislator now has to keep up with that. I literally have my speed hump bills hanging on the wall, and when I have my meetings with BPS, I'm like, where are we with this one? Where are we with this one? Because you have to track it, or else you might have some that might fall through the cracks. You got 14 at that time, 28 older people that were putting in legislation for speed humps. So that was a long way to say yes, please. I'm sure we can work together within this group and any other group to be able to advocate at those hearings. If you all can't make it, all of our hearings are aired live, and you can participate virtually or in person or through written comment and say, hey, we agree with we want to work. We want to make sure that if there's a way that we can advocate for this process to be differently, and if that's, for me, staffing, I 100% agree with that. If this needs to be some additional department within the street department, I agree with that. We've been talking about that in the charter commission meetings about creating these different departments. So, this is all I think would be better practices, to your point, and I think that all of us can advocate for it together. Mm-hmm.
And my understanding was that was like a former alderperson's bill. I guess it got approved, but they're no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious in knowing what was the process of deciding to put these signs. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? About permit
Well, I'll tell you, it's way bigger than the signs. It is a parking permit. It's legislation. They're parking districts. I don't have any in the 10th ward, and I don't have any in the former 26th ward, but I do know of some in the 9th ward. And I had one group that was going to try to put some together in the 10th ward. And I'll tell you what I know about them, and I'll pass it to Kaitlyn, is that it's a constituent led process. So the constituents at some point must have asked that alder that they wanted to put together this parking district. And then once they did that, it went through the legislative process and through the street department. And it also has to have a fiscal sponsor, like somebody that collects the fees. And so on my end, I know what curtailed the one that was trying to happen in the 10th ward, they might still be working on it, is because they transferred it now to the treasurer's department. Prior to that, it was going through some CDCs or something like that. So now that's those parking districts go through the treasurer's department. But again, the key to that, and what I'm saying is, I'm sorry that you didn't know about it, because it's all constituent led. No alder just says, I want to have a parking district, and I'll let you just elaborate.
No, that's exactly correct. I know right now the treasurer's office is doing it, which makes it so it doesn't have to be within a CDC, a SID. And then there's also, they just switched their platform to online, to where you register your license plate with it instead. But they do have, I don't remember if it's a 30-day or 60-day transition period where they'll give out warnings that that you need to get it in with information on how to get it. Yeah.
I was just getting ready to say that. I was just getting ready to say that, because I know we talk like this all the time. We whatever, and that's what I was grabbing the mic for, to say. SID, Community Improvement District. Again, these are within footprints within an area that they collect and tax themselves and use the tax dollars they want to. I might have said SID, I'm sorry, I meant CDC, that collects and administers those parking districts, is because what I know, the ones that I knew were up under Park Central CDC. They used to collect the thing, so collect the fees to have your parking permits. So again, that's I want to make sure that the acronyms, we're not just throwing them out. CID is Community Improvement District, CDC Community Development Corporations. Do we need to have you just come up here and get on the mic and and talk, because they live streaming? So good evening, Mr. Bryson.
When you talked about, for example, speed humps, is there, at what point does the streets department get involved? And at what point does BPS get involved in either speed humps or other things related to street repair, etc.?
I'll just go back through the timeline. So just to give you an example, a constituent says, this is step by step. A constituent comes and says, Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, we are requesting speed humps on our block. I say, do you have the majority of the block? I specifically say, is there anybody on the block that would adamantly oppose this? This is before I even introduce it, because again, it's legislation. Once we get past that step, then we draft the board bills, and it gets introduced first read the first week. Then it goes to committee. When my speed bump bills get to committee, I typically ask constituents off of that block to come and speak in committee on behalf, again, to show the need. If they can't come, of course, I can stand in the gap for them, but I offer that to them. So it gets it passes out of committee, then it goes back, it gets second read on the floor in the Board of Aldermen, then it gets perfected the next week in the Board of Aldermen, then the next week it gets fourth read and finally passed. Then it goes to the mayor's desk, she signs them, they come back, their law, they come back to us, their law. Then they go to BPS, and BPS then puts them together, puts the project together. Then they go to the streets department.
That's been my contention all along.
Yeah.
About the need for just the department.
Yes.
Transportation. Because everybody here would be calling the streets department and saying, where's my speed hump? And they don't realize it's over in BPS.
Yes. St. Louis, right, in BPS, and when it goes into St. Louis Works, the St. Louis Works Department too. So absolutely, Mr. Bryson. So I'm glad you brought that up again with the speaking about the advocacy pieces is that those charter commission meetings, Mr. Bryson, I'll toot his horn because he won't toot. It has been at every last one of them, with it not, if not himself, with representation, pounding the drum for this transportation department, which I 100% support. And so, that would take away from not only you have auditors that do respond and always get stuff done, but to Kaitlyn's point earlier, that's a real issue that you might have an auditor that might say, I'm not putting, nope, because A, B, C, and D, and they have that authority, and that's not, that can't be a best practice, and especially when it can be called out. And so that's why I 100% again agree with the mission that's going right now for this Department of Transportation for the city of St. Louis. And then that will definitely put an end to all of any kind of the foolery that can go on with those speed humps. Yes, sir. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So probably I think process is not the word, but it's captured in that. It's captured in what that would look like for us to have a complete streets for street calming and options of that nature. And then hopefully that coupled with taking it out of the legislative process, because again, that's the hold up, that's 4 or 5 weeks alone, then that will definitely put it together where it wouldn't be as cumbersome and as hard with that. I'm thank you for saying that, sis, because another thing that we do for street calming, I think people only hear speed humps, but another thing that I do and work with my BPS liaison, and we go out on the ground and go to the curbs, go to the corners, is bump outs and medians and other things. All of these things too can happen, not here. Speed humps is legislative, bump outs are not. So bump outs is something that we can say, okay, we want to work with our board. I'm doing it now, working with my board of public service liaison, and he can draw it out, or we work with a planner to draw it out, and then we submit it, and they have it out. It's still the same, vendor that does them, the one vendor. But that's, I think they're working on that too. That's I don't think that's so much a bad thing as that it's just so much right now. And we lost a couple of years of the pandemic and just trying to catch up. And so whereas I normally would be like, hey, keep it all in the city, let's feed the city, work with the city, everything come through the city. Now I have kind of been swayed to support outside, putting out some outside contracts and events just to catch us up. Once we catch up, hopefully in the midst of us catching up, then we'll have that Department of Transportation in place. We'll have some of these, we'll have the trucks and stuff that we have now put money in the budget to buy and different things and build capacity. We'll get the hiring and we'll have more staff to be able to do some of this work and catch up and stuff. And then we can get back on track where it's just city, because I'm all about making sure the city feeds the city first. But at the end of the day, we got to at some point catch up. And to your point, this process will never catch up with this process the way it is.
So I keep hearing about speed,
Mhm.
and I guess I don't know. That's not on my mind. I'm more concerned about the potholes because I drive throughout the city 4 to 5 days a week, and I just been noticing since I leave that creative place, I've been playing frog with the potholes inside that shit. So that's why I guess my main concern is the same process as the speed bumps, or I'm getting that big pothole program work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. The question was about potholes. So it's not the same process, definitely not a legislative process, but it is a reactive process. So that meaning they respond to potholes that have been reported through our Citizen Service Bureau. And this is no lie, our trucks, because of the capacity and the way our system is set up, unless they have like broad hey, we're going to do this whole block and all this, and then they track them. They literally, if you don't have them pinpointed in that CSB system, they will drive past that one to get one that's up there, and they have everything to do it, but that's just the way it's set up. And it's also good for the city to be able to track, what they're doing and the response that they're getting. So for potholes, the best thing to do is right now report them to the Citizen Service Bureau. And I'll tell you, here's another thing that I needed to touch on. There are streets in St. Louis that we don't manage and we don't take care of. And so knowing the difference between those, they're actually considered Missouri highways. So for instance, Page runs through the 10th ward. So I have to have dual roles with MoDOT for Page, and then with the city for some of my other arterials. And the MoDOT, the blessing we have, I will say, is that our director of streets came from MoDOT. So she already has the layer and transition on there, but she's amazing, Bethany Williams. But I will say that again, that if it's just about the potholes, it's reactive and making sure that they're reported. It's really easy to report them. It's a phone call, it's a tweet, an X, whatever it's called now, or you can put it in on the on a email, or if you just I have constituents that are like, I'm not doing that, I'm not computer, I don't, can I just call you? Yes. They'll call me and tell me where the pothole is, and I will either put in the Citizen Service Bureau request, or I will work with our neighborhood improvement specialist to get it in. And then I also track them, especially if they're bad ones, And then just as a caveat to that, if your car has damage from a pothole, you can file a claim with the city for that. Again, through our city council's office and but you have to have had it reported. So you can't just say, like, I rolled over this pothole a month ago and I had to get my tire fixed today. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we got to track that. And if it's not tracked, then it's hard to get the case in. But I have had constituents that had enough damages to their car that they were able to get recouped on some of the funds that they had to spend out. So the potholes, again, are an issue, especially in our weather, inclement weather and after inclement weather, but making sure that we, report them and get them done, and they will. Now, if it's too much, then we need to move up to a street paving. Then that's another issue. But just potholes being repaired, there's a whole crew that's all they do is potholes.
I grew up here my whole life in West Forest in the trash. My whole life, still if you go there today, you know what I'm saying. So put both hands on the steering wheel, making sure, you know what I'm saying, whatever. So I don't see. You say it's tracking. Who's actually tracking this?
Well, the tracking, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, West Forest, the tracking that I was speaking about is the tracking that the Citizen Service Bureau does to the CSB reports. So whatever, if you roll over a pothole, you can either, again, put it on Twitter, you can call them, you can email it, send them a picture, send it to your neighborhood improvement specialist, send it to your alder person for some, and they will put it in for a Citizen Service Bureau request. When the city, which is a CSB request, once that's in there, that is the tracking that I'm talking about, that the streets department, the pothole crew uses to then go and respond to that reported pothole. After they do that, they are able to then report back that we repaired this many potholes on this day, this many potholes on this day, and then go and clear them out of that CSB system. Because if they haven't done a repair, then it's still tracking in the system as it needs to be repaired. And that's, again, the Citizen Service Bureau.
I just want to also add on to that a lot of the issues aren't also potholes, they're also utility work. So it's not something that's completely natural. It's the utility. We had this happen. It was really sad. We repaved a street, and less than a month later, the utilities did work on it. And that was, and it wasn't an emergency. It was just miscommunication overall. And so that's always really disappointing, because when they doing their work, they're supposed to put it back to the way that was before. So if something's in poor condition, they can put it back into poor condition. But if something is in better condition, they're supposed to go all the way to the middle of where the lines are. But that hasn't been happening because it was in an ordinance, but basically a huge miscommunication between BPS and the utility companies, the people that used to do it. retired or left, and etc. Because this happened back in like 2010. And so now we are coming back to this issue. We're looking at redoing that ordinance, and then also talking to these utility companies, because a lot of it, I mean, it's really disappointing when we finally get the funding together to repave something, and then it gets undone by a utility company. And their work is important, but it just needs to make sure it's happening before we're repaving the street.
There's more I need to add after this conversation. Hopefully, can y'all stay around for a little bit longer? Okay, so we'll go with both of y'all, and then we'll kind of keep it moving. Also, if you smelled something, yes, there is pizza back there. Yay, yay! So feel free to grab some, and I think there's some wings too. We have bottled water, so feel free to grab what you like. So, great.
Quickly, I was going to tell you that there was a time before me being down there that there wasn't a half-cent sales tax. So during the Bosley administration, they were successful in getting the half-cent sales tax. The idea of that was so that aldermen would have extra money to do special projects and things like that. It became that everything that was capital improvements in wards was going to be done out of that cash. And so what that means is you don't have any consistency. You're talking about all this kind of, it's balkanized, there's all kinds of these crazy kind of things. So part of what I'm wondering, and I know now aldermen have this money and it's all they've got, and they want to make sure that it's spent well, and you're talking about how you do that, and everybody kind of does it a little differently. As an entire city, I'm wondering if there isn't a way for us to figure out how to make sure that projects that actually do need the engineering happen, and probably don't lose some ability to have some say because they represent their constituents to make sure they don't get nothing. Because there's areas on the north side, obviously, where the wards are huge and they're getting the same amount of money as the other aldermen, which is inequitable. It's not right. And we need to have that bigger thing. In terms of the speed humps, when I was there, speed bumps, nobody could get them. You couldn't get them. The law department said it was a liability. Now speed humps have proliferated like crazy. It is one tool, and you've identified that it's the only tool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
My question is, do the utility companies have to come and get permission from the city, or do they pick up the street?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, they have an ongoing running permit. Now they do coordinate at some level. That's why I was saying the street department. Then most times when we're doing paving in the formerly 26th ward and the 10th ward, it's from a list that we've worked together on. So they already know the scheduling of it as well. And so like you'll have money that's put into even major streets, like great streets like Goodfellow. When I first took office in 2019, I was requested to put money on a great street project that had 26th, 18th, and the 27th ward. And so we all had different stretches of it, which counted of how much money we needed to put in it. But those projects don't always happen like when you're putting the money in, because of, to your point, the utility departments programs and projects that they're doing. So they don't talk to us, but they do talk to the street department because we don't fund them. So the BPS thing, we get notifications and things about projects that will include ward capital and BPS funding. And then we also, as a courtesy, sometimes if they're a bigger project and a bigger stretch, like Alderman Browning and myself are working on Kings Highway together, and things of that nature. But the utility companies know they have their projects go years along, and they have just an ongoing running permit, Ameren Inspire, that you can look up. And if you just don't have the communication, then you don't know, and it's just going to get done. Oh yeah, absolutely, because they have to do that. They have to, when they're doing their street closures and things of that nature, they have to go through the street department. That we have a street closure committee, because we have to have alerted our first responders, you know, and things of that nature in the street traffic, and they might need to know how they can do detouring and put out the detouring signs. So yes, they talk, but as alders, no, we do not know every time they're going to go in and do their major projects.
All right. Well, y'all still gonna be around for a little bit?
I'm still gonna be around, but I have something like I really want to say.
Go ahead. Do what you gotta do.
Because Kelly know me. Kelly knows me. And this yeah, I do. And I hate to, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but I can only show up as myself, and I can only be brutally, truthfully honest. Honest with you all, especially when I look around the room and I see so many of my community in the room. To the brother that asked about the areas that he said he grew up and he's seen it like that. As a person that now represents a ward that has Delmar through it, and so it's split, it literally has the Delmar divide through it, and I see the difference in the inequities that you talked about and how services are rendered, but it's also how services are requested. So brother, what I'm saying to you and anybody else in my earshot, you can do a heat map of people who utilize CSB, which is how the city responds to repairs and things of that nature. And honestly, there's a disparity in how our community uses CSB versus how other communities use CSB. And it's why they get the response, because they use that. When I said tracking, they use those numbers to deploy their resources, to deploy their responses. So I'm always advocating for my community to stand up and speak up for yourself. And if you don't want to do it, find somebody in your neighborhood that'll do it. Or if you have your relationship with your alder or your neighborhood improvement specialist, whoever, make sure that they are tracking that, because it is a reactive process. That's the only way I can put it. And no department has the capacity to ride around and say that. But we, sadly, and I don't have to make this up, I can show you these numbers. We ride around in our communities and we talk to each other about it. We talk on Facebook about it. We talk on, put these fake stories up about it on Nextdoor, which I totally, I do not do Nextdoor, but nobody is going to the source to get things done, to be able to get it done. So please, whatever you've seen on West Florissant, report it. Whatever you see in your communities, report it. And don't think you're getting on nobody's nerves. That's their job. Don't think it's a problem with you doing it, because if you think you're getting on your nerves reporting something one time, I can show you other tracking, but people utilize these services, and that's why they get stuff done. And I ain't trying to beat up on nobody, but I'm just saying, this is, I was always want to advocate for my people to use it, because the other people do.
That is a receipt that does go underutilized.
No, go ahead.
All right, yeah, and then we gotta kind of move on.
A moment to say, the young people over there, wherever you live, if your person, your representative is not doing their job, then you have a power to vote them out. So if just because someone's been an older person for years and years and years, but then they are not doing anything, stop putting those people back in office. It's like, you can do bad all by yourself. If this person works for you.
Absolutely.
So you need to find out who all person is. And stop.
I think she's giving him the CSB.
Last summer, came to speak, and we had the community meetup at the remote office at Sumner, and he mentioned this. And
Thank you.
Going there between the MoDOT road and how you can identify it from the city road.
Yeah.
And talk about that and how to report both of them.
Thank you.
And you mentioned last time how you can actually go and report it online to the best of
Mhm.
because they have your receipt.
Yes.
Calling is okay, but you do not have your receipt. So we have to be mindful of tracking it for ourselves. And I have reported often. And my son asked me every time, Mom, don't people get tired of you? I said, baby, it's just their job.
Exactly. Absolutely.
They go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love having those moments with him. Like, see, you laugh at me, but look at me.
Yeah.
He's proud. So I appreciate you always saying that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Welcome, welcome. So thank you both for please clap it up for them. I will be following up with obviously the slides from, because that was a lot of information. So I'll be following up with everyone. That's why make sure you sign in, provide your contact information. I will be sharing those slides for everyone to have. Feel free to share as widely as you want. I also be sure to follow up, and Amir might have provided information about the CSB. I'll follow up with people too if they're not aware or how to go about reporting any potholes or other things that they see in their community, because that is a form of advocacy. That is a form of a receipt. And Nextdoor, Facebook, Insta, complaining on that ain't gonna get you. Well, yeah. That's not what we need to really make sure we have the data and the information to drive the projects and how the city moves. So I really appreciate both of y'all for providing that information to us. They're back there if people have any other specific questions. I'm going to kind of go through some other things. I did want to make sure that before we move forward, that was a lot. That was a lot of information. And I want to lift up that if you're confused and your brain feels scrambled and you still don't even know all of what we talked about and you don't remember half of it, you're not alone. And so that's why we're here, is to kind of cut through some of those layers and some of those levels to really figure out, like, what are we going to advocate for? What are we going to champion? Whether it's as a collective or individually, maybe you're like really passionate about, man, I need to figure out this stuff about how I'll use CSB. Tired of these potholes. This process is I didn't even know about this process, but now I do. So I'm going to use it and I'm going to share that information with my family, friends, whoever. That is a form of advocacy to spread awareness and make sure people can act in a way to do that. The other foolery that was described about it goes to this, then it bounces here, then it goes back to the alderman, and then da-da-da-da-da. If the alderman's feeling like a petty Patricia or a petty Patrick that day, or for years and ain't checking for you, and you say, hey, this is an issue on my street, and they ain't checking for it, and they say, hey, because the buck stops there, then maybe that's something that as a collective, if people are really feeling that, maybe that's something we need to rally around to make sure we change. But it's going to take not only just us in this space. Oh, it's some more people in here. Look at this. Okay. Not only just in this space, it's going to take even more. But we starting today. So I just wanted to lift that up. That was a lot of information. The process is very convoluted and confusing intentionally. But how can we break that down and advocate to streamline it better? And I appreciate Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard, because she partners and she works with the community. And so I really appreciate that she really is a partner in a lot of things. And y'all make sure y'all have these conversations with y'all alders too, if you ain't already. Because as my mama said, these people work for who they work for? Facts. All right. So I know, shout out to Kaitlyn. She already kind of stole my thunder a little bit. But I did want to lift up some of the bills, and we already talked about it, that are moving through the process, the legislative process, that really address what we talking about. And so again, I try to make sure that people are aware and are informed to move and act how they want to. So I'm going to kind of go through these a little bit, because I know we talked about them already, but I just want to make sure people know this. And again, I will send this information out to people. So if you don't remember, you don't know the board bills, you will get this information. But I just wanted to lift it up. I know we already talked about the Automated Traffic Enforcement Act, also the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Improvement Fund. Those things are moving along in the process. They were perfected. At that, what was that, 6 hour long meeting? I fell asleep watching that twice. So those bills were perfected, and I'm sure they'll be up for final passage this or next week. As the session concludes, I also want to lift up, it was mentioned resolution 200. That's the Vision Zero resolution. And as the Alderwoman mentioned, everybody voted for that. So that says something. And again, that's something as we are advocating for things. This is a form of a receipt to show that our alder people, our electeds, say that this is a priority for the city of St. Louis. So I think that's something that we can leverage as individuals and collectively as we are pushing to change the processes and a lot of the policies to make sure we have a better infrastructure in streets. Something else I kind of wanted to lift up was a couple bills, I don't know, or one resolution. I don't know like what is going to happen with that, but I wanted to lift it up because there has been some conversation around it. So first, we talked about Board Bill 217. Alderwoman Schweitzer was here last month to speak to her efforts in updating the city's complete streets policy. So to be continued with that next session. I also did want to lift up, and I don't know what's going to happen with this particular resolution from Alderwoman Tyus, but I wanted to mention it, and we talked about this. I mentioned this at Create Space. The resolution hasn't been passed or anything, but it's held in committee. But again, there are conversations being had to figure out, again, the different ways of enforcement. So this resolution, again, was held, and it's a resolution, which is different from a board bill, right? Or a piece of legislation. But basically it is looking to for a board of aldermen to meet with different representatives with the police retirement system, obviously the police department and the personnel department, to figure out if there's a way to modify requirements through state and other entities to see if retired police officers can work part-time as traffic enforcement officers. So again, I am lifting this up because these are conversations that are being had by our electeds. If people feel a certain type of way, holler at your alderperson about it. Something else I did want to lift up, this was passed last session, and I know Kaitlyn mentioned ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and some of the allocations of federal funding. So I just pulled this just to kind of remind people or like make sure people were aware of some of the appropriations that have already been made. So Board Bill 120, but it was passed. So it's ordinance number 71650. I mean, it allocated a lot of money to invest in various pieces of our infrastructure. And so I'm pulling from the board bill just some of the budget lines. And again, there's more money than this, but I wanted to pull some things specifically related to what we're talking about. So in this ordinance that was passed last session, the Board of Public Service, we've been mentioning that all evening. So the Board of Public Service has been allocated $55 million. And then again, you see kind of the different lines there. I will pull out $12 million to design and implement traffic calming and roadway improvements based on traffic studies. 14.5 mil to funding to address ADA and traffic calming improvements with 5 corridors. And those corridors are Grand, Goodfellow, Jefferson, Kings Highway, and Union. I also want to lift up 3.5 million to address safety improvements at the top 10 crash locations, which we mentioned before, at 8 million for street paving for arterial roads. So again, I'm just lifting things up in case people were not aware that this had already been passed. And then also, this is still part of the same bill, 9.57 mil directly allocated to the streets department. And so 1.25 mil going to develop a mobility and transportation master plan for the city of St. Louis. We also, and you see some of the other things, I'm not going to list all of this, but I am going to lift up 6 million to sidewalk improvements. So again, this has been passed, y'all. This has been passed. And I know they're working on this. They're working on implementing this. But I wanted to lift this up just so people were aware that there is funding that has been allocated to some of these things. So I just want people to be clear on that. And I'm gonna pause for a minute because that was a lot. But I guess like I'm one of those people, I try to present information so people are aware. And also it's kind of like, okay, Kelly, that was cute. That was great. What we gonna do with that information? Right. And so this is kind of the point where I wanted to discuss, have a conversation, whatever, and provide some alternatives and thoughts to really figure out like what's the next steps? What are we going to do with all this information we talked about? So the first thing I wanted to lift up complete streets. So I feel like I'm almost the complete streets lady by now, having conversations in community and in other spaces about the efforts to update the policy. We had Alderwoman Schweitzer here last month, and it's moving in the process. It will be reintroduced, and we'll see. Again, I don't have a magic wand. I don't want to jinx anything. I don't know, but it will be introduced next session and revisited. I wanted to ask people that are here tonight if anyone is interested in hopping on a Zoom with me, and Lauren ain't here. She had to, she jet setting and stuff. But if people were interested in hopping on a Zoom to actually go through the major components of that bill, because I know she talked through some of it last month, and since then she's updated some of the language. So I am just saying, is there any interest in hopping on a Zoom to kind of go through what is in the legislation? Because again, this bill, it will be reintroduced. And that would be a way, again, for people to learn what's in the bill. And if you want to advocate, speak to, provide suggestions in what's in the bill, you will have the opportunity to do that. So show of hands, is anyone interested in that? Okay, so we will later this month, to be determined. So I'll follow up with everyone that signed in, whose contact information I have, to establish a date. It'll be in the evening, I'm sure, on Zoom, for us to go through the bill, major highlights, see if people have questions. And then also if folks are really interested in that advocacy piece, right? So maybe you're able to go to City Hall, and I'll make sure people are aware on how to keep track of it too. And I'll provide updates. Maybe people are available to go to City Hall to a public infrastructure and utilities committee meeting and want their 3 minutes of fame. That's what I call when you do your public comments, 3 minutes of fame. Maybe you're able to do that, but you're not sure on how to go, how to basically structure your thoughts or what that process is. I can also help with people if that's something that people want. I'm not going to tell you what to say now, but I want to make sure people have the information. They can make that testimony in person. They can submit it as well. And also there is that Zoom option too. So I can also help people if that's something that they want to sign up for, to make sure they have the information to sign up for it properly and be prepared to testify. So I saw some hands. So I will follow up so we can walk through the bill and people can be able to think of potential solutions or additions that they want to see in the bill. Cool. To be continued on that. Next up, we talked about a whole lot of stuff. Processes that are jacked up, upcoming legislation, different bills. If people are super, super passionate about anything that we talked about, please make sure you have that conversation with your alder person. And thank you. So make sure you have these conversations with them because that is a form of advocacy. I also want to mention that as we continue to meet, because we're going to be in this space every month, y'all, for at least the next year, okay? I signed a contract. So, yeah. So, I'm sorry. So, as we meet, I will continue to provide updates about complete streets, activity, and other pieces of legislation that are moving to address infrastructure. We didn't even touch on the RAM settlement coin. So there are a lot of conversations being had about improving infrastructure. There is more to come. I mean, Charles is at the Charter Commission meetings every every meeting advocating for Department of Transportation. And like, so there's a lot of conversations being had. We also have the Community Mobility Committee, the city of St. Louis. So it's a lot of stuff happening. So we'll use this space to kind of lift up some of those issues and some of those topics, so people are aware. And again, Transform 314, Kaitlyn McGowan as well, can help if people are really passionate about, they want that 3 minutes of fame. So we'll make sure that you have the support needed so that your dreams can come true and you can have your 3 minutes with the alders. Again, we're not going to tell you what to say, but we'll make sure you have the information, you feel confident and supported to do that. Also, because we're about that action. That's the whole point when we have the meetups. We're going to talk about information and we're going to act with that information. So as we continue to have these conversations about the processes, about the policies, about the procedures, I really want to get a sense of like, what are people really checking for? Like, what are people really passionate about? What is just something that's like, ooh, this really grinds my gears, Kelly. We need to do something about this. And we'll use that to really launch a legit campaign. I'm excited because we're going to have a real budget soon. Clap that up. Clap that up. So that means we can put more into outreach. We can put more into other efforts and other things that people feel we need to do to make sure we're out there, we're educating our people in our communities, and we are making sure people are equipped with the tools to be able to effectively advocate. But it's going to take a lot of people to be able to move the needle, and we can do it. It's going to take, a little effort, a little coin, more food, obviously. And again, we just have to grow and we have to build from this space. So I also want to lift up, as we have these meetings, I will ask y'all, like, how y'all feel about this? On a scale of 0 to 5, 0, like, I don't give a about this, or 5, nah, this is trash, Kelly. We need to do something. We need to act. Because like I said, it's not about Kelly McGowan. It's not about Transform. This is about all of us and the people that ain't even in this building with us in this room. So I wanted to lift that up. I'm going to pause to see, are there any other suggestions or future topics that people want to discuss? Because again, we're crafting these conversations and these activities every month, because we're going to be here every month. So what are some future topics that people want to learn about, discuss, and potentially act on? I see you.
One of my suggestions is, how can we change the education system to teach our young people about like emotional stability and taxes and just like life shit that they don't get in general from school. You know what I'm saying? They can't get from that person.
Okay, that's real. I will say, and I totally receive that, and I agree with you. I do want to speak to like the space here. It is specific to like addressing streets and infrastructure. I do think that there is space for us to figure out, and we talked about this at Create Space, on how can we engage and get more, because people was talking about during COVID, they was giving out licenses to people like how Oprah used to give out free gifts and stuff. You get a gift. We were talking about a lot of those things, and whether there is more education that needs to be made, maybe a public service announcement, maybe like other ways to kind of like get folks more aware, engaged, and educated on not only just like driving in general, but just a lot of other things when we're talking about supporting, maintaining, advocating for our communities. So I'm a spin it a little bit. But I think that making sure we are supporting our young people beyond the education that they receive in school, I think that's something that we can do. Are you gonna help us with that? Y'all gonna help us with that? Okay, cool. Okay, I'm gonna go back here and then I'm gonna circle back to you, Mr. Stringfellow.
Population continues to go down in the city of St. Louis.
Thank you for sharing that.
Speaking of empty buildings, I am so, I can't tell, passionate about something being done with the bricks that are being taken out of our community. And for some reason, they're valuable to other folks besides us. And I think we're sitting on, especially in our neighborhoods, you know, something of value to other people, but not us. So something with the bricks, and I know we told y'all before, but I just think these bricks gotta be useful to our community. That's where they're coming from. So.
Okay.
The buildings that are being torn down and the bricks that are being taken away, so why can't we benefit from that?
Okay, and I want to just lift up, I'm not texting somebody, I'm taking notes. So I don't want to be like, why is she texting somebody? That's rude. I'm taking notes of what people are saying. So we'll go with Charles and then.
One is land use plan is now being discussed. Second thing is, what is a city department of transportation and what would that look like?
I heard about that.
What?
I heard about that, Charles.
Yeah, there's a rumor going around.
So I do see, and I didn't mention that, but you know the strategic land use plan people, you know they gonna be here. Cause I you know, they gonna be here. They gonna be here. Alicia, yes, and then I'll come back up, Mr. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I'm kind of just a Chuck E. Cheese. That's interesting. Oh, bless it. Mrs. Stringfellow, and then I know Christy, you had your hand up, right? And then
Getting back to, in the St. Louis American newspaper, there's always listed individuals that are listed as doing things to benefit the children, to benefit that. Why not have some of those people that's supposed to be benefiting that is newsworthy to come to and talk to us too? They advocate that they're this for the children's and this for the have it there, and that information is in the St. Louis American newspaper. And you see them, but they don't reach down to my level. I don't know who they are, and I don't know what they're doing. I would be interested, if they're worthy of having an article in the paper on that. Who are they? What are they about?
okay. Thank you, Mrs. Stringfellow. Christy.
I think it's important for us to talk about this north-south metro line and transit access for zero vehicle households. So people in our car, north side, and everybody else south side. And that conversation with economic development.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I know we meeting, but I'm gonna say it because it's on my mind. Would you mind, us partnering and because I would love for you to kind of come up and kind of speak to a lot of things through the Community Mobility Committee and just other things, and we can talk about it because I know we're gonna meet tomorrow. I know we're gonna meet, but I kind of want you because in that metro, I still have a lot of questions about that entire process. And to your point on how it's making sure that it is supporting and serving families that legit have no vehicles. I still have a lot of questions about that. Yeah, to be continued. Craig.
Yeah, so this is countercultural, I understand that, but we've lost the ability to deal, she mentioned brick. If brick is valuable vertical, brick is valuable horizontal. We have a whole bunch of alleys and streets and so forth that are bricks, but our only way to deal with that is to jackhammer them up. When the hole is not well filled, we put asphalt over it, and what do you think is gonna happen? Energy, all the energy that was created for those bricks was done 100 years ago, and that energy will remain in there. It's sustainable. It is climatically wise, and it will last forever. When we take a petroleum product and put it over it, that's a Band-Aid, and we're gonna have to continually replace that every maybe 30 years. It should be every 10 years. Whenever the city will do that, that's one major thing that I would think, and I don't know how we deal with that, because nobody wants to do that, because there is an expense up front, but the long-term expense is less.
I got you.
Yeah. I would change this reactive system. If I'm a single mom and I have 4 kids going to 3 different schools and I'm working 2 jobs, and you expect me to go down the street and figure out what that address is, where my axle just ended up, shame on us as a city. We should be proactive. We could have the same people who are going out and paving who would, hey, every year we have potholes, right? Because we have freeze thaw. We would have people who are there and would systematically, as opposed to going north, west, east, south, based on who complains, we would do it systematically, and we would just do all the potholes along the street, right? Yeah, that's what we would do. I don't know why we can't. We should. It's equitable.
Facts.
We're putting burdens on the people who have the greatest need and have the least ability to get this stuff done.
Facts. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily directed towards this, but like last meeting, you looked at not being able to have people who aren't here. So that's why we did the live stream. So like if anybody has any other thoughts of just community engagement, ways that we can do that. So that's one way. So we can upload this on social media, upload it on YouTube, let people know, make clips of it, you know, especially when we have like our guests or Alderman and stuff like that. But if it's any other ways that anybody else has for us to kind of keep this conversation going and make it more relevant, I think that's just as important as us.
Facts. I'm gonna add on that, but clap up Ryan, please. Yes, and the crew, the squad over there that are helping us. We trying something with the stream. We trying it. Thank y'all, seriously. I also want to lift up to what Ryan mentioned about the community engagement. Like Transform, we are a small but mighty crew. Okay, we mighty but we small, which means we need help. So we need every person in here, the networks that you exist within, the contacts you have, your friends, your mama in them, your cousin in them, whoever's on your block, where you work, where you play, whatever it is, where you worship. We also want to lean on y'all to make sure that, because y'all are our ambassadors. I don't know if you realize that or not, but y'all are Transform 314 ambassadors. So all the information that we're sharing, when we upload this information, we will post it and share it. Click share. Also, these conversations that we're having, because I'm the queen of the follow-up email. The stuff I send, there's a lot of stuff I send. Make sure we continue to share that and circulate that in our communities to have those conversations. When you sitting in the barbershop, because I've been in barbershops in my day, have those conversations when you're sitting there with your barber, with other people. People are tired of our jacked up streets, but it's like, what can we do about it? Well, we're talking about a lot of those issues and concerns that a lot of people aren't even aware of. So I also want to challenge everyone in this space. Like, yeah, Transform, we are convening space here to really dive into the issues and also co-develop solutions with all of our stakeholders. And also we need everyone in this room to be able to share that information and bring somebody here with you too. So I also want to say, like, and that's cool. send us the contacts and the informations and the ideas. And also, like, we need y'all to do that too, because it's gonna take all of us. Yep.
This affects everybody. And then you get people to come in on this topic, then they'll be there for the economic development, for the other things. Those other things seem so hard, and they are, because this is hard.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying, this is a topic that affects every single person. We all get those potholes. We all have raggedy streets, jacked streets. So I just want to say, I think this is a good topic to have.
I appreciate that.
We can easily market to other people too.
Yep.
There's other stuff hard to get people to come to the table.
Yeah. And so this is a good start. I appreciate that. We starting. So we have homework. We have our marching orders. I do want to lift up. Make sure you save the date. I will follow up. We will be here the second Wednesday of every month. It might change in the summer because I know they have some stuff going on. But I'll be sure to relay that information in a timely manner so people can show up. But go ahead, put that on your calendar. Our next meetup will be Wednesday, May 8th. Same time, same rocking place. I also will be following up with people to make sure we get that Zoom meeting scheduled and people can hop on and we can get into some of the changes of the Complete Streets policy bill and make sure people have the support that they need to maybe add suggestions that they want to see added to the bill. And also, like I said, if you want your 3 minutes of fame, that I think everyone should have at least once in their life. It's nothing like it. And I also want to lean in on, I know in the beginning, the very first meetup we had, I think we have some people that we had some people that were here the very first one. And we talked about what our respective roles in lane and advocacy are. So I really want to revisit that as we're talking about engaging community, bringing more people along, maybe making sure connecting the dots with your contacts and your networks. Maybe you're like a really outgoing person, like my mom. She's super outgoing. She talks to everybody. Love you, Mom, but you do. You know you do. Maybe there are people that aren't really people, but they have the time to send an email, make a phone call or 2 or 10 or 20 or 30. You know what I mean? So I think we all have our talents and strengths and things that we enjoy doing, and we can leverage those gifts and talents to make sure we're continuing to build and grow to move the needle. So I really want like folks here in this space tonight to really think about like, how can we contribute to this movement? How can I contribute to this cause? And I'm not saying you got to go out and do something that you ain't used to doing. People have friends. I know I got a small friend circle, but I do have friends. I have other people that I connect with on the internet land that do live here. Work folks, people in between. Each one of us has that network and some type of connections as well. So I just want people to think you don't have to go outside of what you already do or who you already know. Just utilize what you're already connected to and leverage that. And that's how we're going to be able to grow and make these changes. So I am done talking because I'm tired of hearing my voice. I really appreciate y'all for coming out tonight. Again, I'm really excited because I really think that this is the start to something. So feel free, hang out, whatever. I'll start cleaning things up. But I really appreciate folks coming out. Stay tuned and stay safe out there, y'all. Have a good one.